this new assignment. Today we're going to explain the Bulgarian Polish weightlift systems on a comparative analysis, the training philosophies, and the applications to athletic development. The introduction and historical context was the Soviet dominance on weightlifting from the 60s to the 80s. On 72, Smalcers won the Olympic gold medal, and Bulgaria rises on on his Olympic champions. And then around the 90s, it was both systems were globally recognized. Why this matters? Why these systems matters? Because they had extraordinary success rates despite the small population, the contrasting training philosophies with proven results, also the principles applicable to many sports beyond weightlifting, and they have basically two key figures, which was Ivan Avadiev, the architect of the Bulgarian system, the radical high intensity approach, and Zygmunt Smalcers, the 72 Olympic champion, and it was much more technical. Both of the systems evolved from the Soviet foundations, but the Bulgarian system had much more radical departure from the traditional methods. The Polish method was much more structure and refinement in terms of periodization. The core philosophy of the Bulgarian system is basically maximum intensity daily. It's daily exposure to near maximal weights, 90 to 100%. Competition lifts are prioritized over the excessive works. They basically only did the lifts of the competition. They have frequent competitions as a validation of training and a high selection pressure, the survival of the fittest. So they had minimal exercise variety. They only had like three core lifts: the snatch, the Olympic competition lift, and the clean and jerk. Okay. This is basically the training frequency was 12 to 18 training sessions per week, multiple sessions daily, 2-3 times a day sometimes, and they have near maximal weights in most working sets. They have basically warm up around 60%, 60 to 70%. The working sets start at 80, and the maximal attempts from 90 to 100. And this is basically the training structure that they did. On Monday, on the morning, they use snatch or front squat and up to the max. And the afternoon, clean and jerk, front and front squat up to the max. And the evening was sometimes accessory work on the weakest link. And this is basically how they distributed. And you can see some similarities then of what Louis Simmons did. And if we remember last time, it was because Louis Simmons were exposed to this type of trainings, the literature. The training volume distribution, unlike the traditional systems with high volume at moderate intensity, the Bulgarian methodology emphasizes frequent exposure to maximal weights with minimal exercise variations. The key characteristics: competition-like intensity in every session, high frequency of training the same lifts, daily maxing creates consistent adaptation stimulus, the coach supervised throughout all the sessions, and they had recovery focus between sessions. Now, the Polish system, the core philosophy, they look for much more long-term athletic development. They try to build a better athlete, much more than just a weightlifter. So they had much more technical mastery, and they prioritize it over the immediate results. They have a systematic progression through all the training phases, and they also had an individualized preparation for peak performances. This allows them to have a long career. The training frequency, you can see, is less than the Bulgarian. There's 6 to 10 training sessions per day, 1 to 2 sessions daily, and 5 to 6 days training. They have a wide exercise variation, as it was with the Soviet approach. So you have the competition lifts, the power variation, the pull and partial lifts, strength movements, and the accessory works. They had like 15 plus exercise variations that they did regularly, and the training intensity was predominantly submaximal, 70 to 85%, and they have sometimes strategic peak intensity phases. This, you can see, is the basis for the undulating intensity patterns across the cycles. And this is basically the periodization. This is the annual training cycle wave, where you start with a lot of volume and then you decline it, and the intensity is always going up. So you have the accumulation phase with high volume, intensity 70 to 75 from weeks like 1 to 4. Intensifications, you have a moderate volume and the intensity increases up to 85%. And the realization, you have low volume and intensity very high. Something that they emphasize a lot, it was the good technique. They have a foundation work on the exercise variety, the speed strength, and the power development, and the competition focus on technical precisions. The key training principle was that the model was systematically progresses from high volume, lower intensity to a high intensity, lower volume, allowing sustainable technical development. And this allows also the progressive adaptation and peak performance at the right time. The characteristics, it was an undulating progression over 3 to 4 months in microcycles. They have an exercise variety targeting different aspects of the technique and the movement, and they have the strategic intensity increases with the compensatory volume. They plan the peaks. That was something that they plan accordingly to the competition calendar, and they look for injury prevention. This is not like the survival of the most optimal. The coaching philosophy was perfect. It was like perfect technique at maximal weights that will translate in better performance at maximal weights. That was said by Sigmund Smutsers. The comparison that we have here is that the frequency, it was much more frequent on the Bulgarian system, 12 to 18, we already said. The Polish was 6 to 10. The intensity was 90 to 80, basically maximum attempts daily. The Polish system, it was submaximal peaks, minimal exercise variety, only competition lifts on the Bulgarian, and diverse exercises on the Polish. Periodization, basically, it was non-constant max intensity year-round, something similar of what Louis Simmons did. Structure, the Polish, it was more structured and on distinct phases with specific focus. The training volume was lower and fewer reps, but at high intensity in the Bulgarian, and much more volume on the Polish system. The career longevity, it was typically shorter on the Bulgarian system because of the way they train, and it was longer on the Polish system. Sorry. Okay. These key performance trade-offs is that the Bulgarian system optimized for rapid performance gains and the peak competitive readiness at the cost of sustainability and injury risk, against what the Polish did, that they designed for a long-term development with lower risk of injuries and longer career longevity. There's here a strategic consideration that the appropriate system depends on the athlete development stage, the genetic predisposition to recovery, and the competitive schedule demands. This is basically a comparison on the intensity and volume of both systems. We already explained that. It's just like a visual trade-off. What is the important thing here is the shared elements that both have, because we already mentioned the differences. The shared similarities or the shared elements are the Olympic focus, technical excellence. They search for young athletes. They had both national support, and they were Eastern European countries, and they have like a coaching culture. The cultural context was the both systems, both of them emerged from the Eastern Bloc of sports science tradition, but they diverged significantly in the training philosophies. As we saw, the Bulgarian was much more radical on his departure from the Soviet orthodoxy, and the Polish maintained more much the traditional periodization. Both systems produce Olympic and world champions through different pathways. The Bulgarian system revolutionized weightlifting in the 70s and the 80s on an unprecedented results, while Polish system demonstrated sustainable exercises across multiple decades. Pros and cons. The pros of Bulgarian system was rapid strength gains, quick increases in one arm performance. You have competition readiness like year round. It was simple programming, and that increased the mental toughness. The cons: high injury risk, um, burnout potential. It was pretty easy to go on burnout. The careers were shorter and high attrition rate. Survival of the fittest eliminates many potential talents. The Polish system, the pros they had was it was much more sustainable progress, lower injury risk, a broader toolkit. They have much more exercise variety, and they have a larger career. The cons: this slower initial gains. It take it takes much more time to reach the peak. It was a complex planning, um, and needed higher coaching demands, and you have to have an exercise mastery. How can you apply these methods to sports performance? You can you can you can use the power transfer principles on the rate of force development. Both system uh, develop the explosive power that you can transfer directly to a sport movement. Is either in basketball, football, track and field. The bar velocity, the speed movement in the Olympic lift correlate with the athletic performance, and the triple extension of the hip, knee, and ankle mirrors the jumping, sprinting, ski movements. Some implementation strategies: the Bulgarian influence, you use the high intensity blocks during peaking phases. Polish influence, you can use progressive loading patterns through the competitive season in a technical focus. And the integration, um, you can use the Olympic lift comprises of 20 to 40% of the strength training, not the entire program. Some sport-specific applications on MMA and martial arts. You can do 3 to 4 sessions per week, avoiding pre-fight periods. What you focus on: hand variation, push presses, high pulls, and you have to mix that with conditioning, something that the Polish did. Now, football players on the off seasons, you can do 4 to 5 times a week. In the in season, 2 times a week for maintenance. The lineman can use the Bulgarian style blocks for high intensity, and the skilled players can use the Polish system. sorry, the track and field athletes is event-specific programming because they depend the throwers, the sprinters. Um, it depends on which sport it is, and the vertical development focus for basketball, 3 times a week with reduced volume, intensity, and everything is like an jump focus. Here, basically, is an integrated program design framework wherein you start the program planning. You can do the polish framework and insert certain blocks of the Bulgarian method, and you can use the progression from 70 to 90%. At certain points, you have to take decisions. It depends on the athlete level, the competition calendar, and the recovery, and you make a individualized hybrid program that consists on technical growth and strength development. How can you implement that? It's individualized. You have to adjust the intensity and volume on the athlete experience. You have to track the bar speed, the RP, and the internal loading. The hybrid approach allows the athletes to build a technical foundation and work capacity first, and then safely expose them to competition level intensities without burnout. And the checklist for the implementation guidelines and key takeaways. Implementation checklist: 1. Technical foundation first. 2. Coach oversight mandatory. 3. Progress frequency gradually. 4. You have to monitor recovery and markers of the internal load and signs of fatigue. And 5. Individualized by sport and position. Okay. The key takeaways of this study was that both systems produce elite results. The Bulgarian is maximum intensity, high frequency, daily max training, minimal exercise variety, and competition like atmosphere. The Polish, it was much more structured periodization on a wave like programming. They have more technical emphasis and exercise variety for long term development of the athlete and a long career. If you want to do a hybrid approach, which is much more practical, you can use the Polish structure with the strategic Bulgarian intensity blocks. This to provide a best balance for the athlete. And also you have to look for the recovery drive success because it depends. I mean, regardless of the system you choose, recovery is basically the ultimate key that determines adaptation and progress. Okay. Conclusions and recommendations, like for coaches, you can start with a periodized framework. You can add the high intensity of the Bulgarian and in the blocks. You can use derivate when technical time or training age is limited, and you can align the training peaks, managing the cumulative load across training cycles. And for the athletes, build technical proficiency before pursuing intensity. Respect the progression timelines. Please do not skip or jump the phases. Prioritize recovery, sleep, nutrition, and you have to have a honestly communicative feedback. For an implementation strategy and the long term, you can use this for 3 to 4 months on macro cycles. In mid-term, 1 to 2 weeks, and short term is daily or weekly. Here are the references, the primary academic sources that I use for this for this assignment. So thank you very much.